Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In this tutorial you will learn how to knit Honeycomb Brioche flat in the round in one color. This tutorial is meant to give you a head start for the Deep Dive collection, which contains the bandana cowl I'm wearing, a classic beanie pattern, and also a beret. All three patterns are knit in this beautiful squishy knitting stitch. So we will swatch for the patterns, learn the Honeycomb Brioche stitch on the way, and we will also cast on and bind off with the methods I used in this pattern, which are the German twisted cast on and the Icelandic Bind-Off. On top of it, we will have a look at the increases and decreases I used to shape the bandana cowl and also the crowns of the beanie and the beret. Let's get started. Let's talk about how to swatch in general very quickly first. So if you want to knit a design, try to make your swatch as close to the design elements as possible. So to give you some examples, both the beanie and the beret start with a 4-row goddess stitch border, and we will definitely do that too. The bandana cowl ends with the same detail, and we will work with the cast on, the German twisted cast on, and the Icelandic bind-off in our swatch. Also, the bandana cowl has a 2-stitch border on each side, and we can put that into our swatch too. Sorry. If the design you want to knit is knit in the round, like the beanie and the beret, you're gonna swatch in the round. If it gets knit flat, you're gonna swatch flat, and if it gets knit both ways, like the bandana cowl, you're gonna swatch both ways. Hope that makes sense. So obviously, swatch with the yarn you want to work your knit in, and then I would recommend to start with the needle side the designer is using, unless you already know that you two are kind of very different knitters. Let's say the designer is a tight knitter, that would be me, and you were more on the loose side and you already know you have a difference, so you can start with whatever feels a bit more appropriate to get the right gauge. The pattern has written gauge, and you're gonna look at it, and whatever is written there as for 10 centimeters or 4 inches, that stitch number you multiply by 1.5. So you get a slightly bigger swatch than you have to measure. It makes everything a bit easier, and also your tension is a bit more correct. So for this pattern we have as a gauge 14 stitches, and if you multiply that by 1.5 you get 21 stitches. However, you need an even number, so let's go down to 20 stitches. And then I said I want to add 2 border stitches like the bandana cowl has, so we end up with a cast on of 24 stitches. So I knit my swatch with the same yarn, then I knit the pattern, Alright, again. So I knit my swatch with the same yarn, I knit my samples in. It's Cambria from the Fiber Co. Let me give a quick shout out to those guys. So I want to give a shout out to the Fiber Co., an amazing yarn company here in Europe, and their absolutely fantastic yarn Cambria. I got yarn support, but honestly I love that yarn. I would knit with it anyway. Thanks a bunch, guys. You're awesome. Okay, and we are back. So let's cast on 24 stitches with a German twisted cast on. The German twisted cast on is very simple to the long tail cast on. A bit of extra steps, but yeah, that's where we start. And you do need a longer tail. Now 24 stitches are not a whole bunch, so I guess that's enough. As always, you start with a slip knot, put it on your needles, By the way, I'm working here on 5mm, same as the pattern, US 8. Okay, let's have a look. Come a bit closer, a lot closer. So, you got your tail in the front, your yarn in the back. You hold your yarn as if you would like to do a long tail cast on. And as a little reminder, this is how you do the long tail cast on. You get into the loop and your thumb, grab the strand of yarn from your index finger, go through the loop, let loose, and there you got it. That's not what we want to do. However, this is quite similar. That's why I'm going to point this out. Okay, again, you hold it as if you want to make a slingshot. And now you don't get into the loop, but you go underneath the whole thing. And you jump into the loop from the top. Now you pick the strand of yarn from your index finger. And try to untwist the loop you just made here. And go through it. Want to do it again? Want to do it again, right? So, go underneath both strands of yarn from your thumb, jump into that loop, damn it. One more time. Get underneath the whole loop, both strands of yarn from your thumb, jump into the loop from the top, bring your yarn to yourself. Grab that strand of yarn from your index finger and now untwist that loop. Come through it and there you go. The next one. So I'm going to cast on my 24 stitches here. Okay, so now you turn, work flat 4 rows of garter, so just knit 4 rows, that's it. So I made my 4 rows of garter, and now I told you I want to implement those 2 garter border stitches. So I'm going to knit 2, and I add a removal marker. I have ADHD, I like to have a lot of visual reminders. You don't have to do that. Now, how do you knit Honeycomb Brioche flat? So for me, Honeycomb Brioche is a hybrid of garter and fisherman's rib. And when you knit flat, that means you kind of work every row in knit stitches, and then we have a little bit of extra. So let me explain why it is fisherman's rib for me. Oh, that's the other part. It goes knit 1, and then you knit 1 below, and that is the crazy stitch from the fisherman's rib. If you want to say it has a crazy stitch. So if you work fisherman's rib flat, it goes knit 1 below, purl 1. But we do knit 1 below, knit 1, knit 1 below here. So you know how to knit 1, right? Knit 1 below means you don't knit through that regular loop, but you go 1 below. See that hole here, the hole below underneath the stitch, and you knit in that one. Again, knit 1, and now knit 1 below. And admittedly, that feels a bit weird at the beginning, but it gets better, I promise. And you do that until you have only 2 stitches on your needles. And here again, I put in a marker as a reminder, and I knit those last 2 stitches. Another thing you can do is to put in a marker on your right side as a reminder. So this will develop soon and you will have a clear right side and wrong side, but nevertheless, you know, sometimes it's a bit hard to do at the beginning. It takes a while to develop. So now we are on the wrong side, and the first 2 stitches are our regular garter stitches, so just knit those and slip the marker. And now we will work that honeycomb brioche on the back. And as I said, this is also a knit row plus a little bit of extra, and you can already see what I'm doing here, what the extra is. I'm going to explain it in a second. So what you get is a classic knit stitch, and then one where you have an extra strand of yarn, and you lift that up, and then you get, like as you usually do, also into that knit loop, and you knit those 2 together, and that's your repeat on the wrong side. Knit 1 and knit that loose strand of yarn, lift it up and knit it together with your regular stitch. So frankly, that's all there is to honeycomb brioche in one color. The only thing you now have to do is to alternate in the next 2 rows. So now we are on the 3rd row, right side. Let's do those up border stitches, slip the marker. Now you can actually see in which stitch you need to knit below and in which one you don't. This looks like a very regular one, while this one has a very thick purl bump. So the one that looks regular is the one where you get in below, and the other one with a thick one purl bump you knit in regular. I think it's already filled up, can't take any more. So in the first right side row we work knit 1 below. Now we do it the other way around, we do knit 1 below, knit 1. 4th row, last row if you want to, and just like we did before, we work the 2 border stitches, and now it's the other way around here too. So the one that looks regular, that's a bit different to the right side. So the one that looks regular, it can't give you anything, right? So you just knit it, and the one that looks like it's filled up on the wrong side, that one has the loose strand you can knit together. All right, as you can see, I did work quite a bit more. This is the wrong side, this is the right side, and you already see this beautiful honeycomb brioche texture. Now that it's a bit easier to see everything, let's work those 4 row repeat again, and I hope that's going to help you to understand how to knit this even better. Alright, we have our 2 border stitches, just knit stitches, get them done, slip the marker. Now the first stitch is a classic knit stitch, knit 1, and the second stitch on repeat, by the way, is that knit 1 below. So you don't go into the classic loop, you go 1 below. Let me get closer for you. Not in the classic loop, but in that hole below. Get in there, grab that strand of yarn, knit it as usual. Okay, and then you repeat it. Knit 1 below. Knit 1 and knit 1 below. So the knit stitches have this doubled, this double bump here, this double purl bump, and where you knit 1 below is what looks like a regular stitch. You only have 1 strand here. So there you can give a second one, and the other one is already stuffed up. You can't add 1 more, so just knit it. Okay, 1 strand from that purl bump, 2 strands, and it's a normal knit 1. Knit 1 below, knit 1, and just work it till your last 2 stitches. There you slip the marker and work regular knit stitches for the border. All right, row 2, turn your work. We're still flat, working flat. Again, knit those 2 border stitches, slip the marker, and now we're on the wrong side. And the wrong side is the one where, if you want to, the texture has to give it something to you back. And here we're going to lift that loose strand. So if you have kind of 2 here, you take the one that's easier to grab from the bottom up, and then you get into that regular loop and knit those 2 together. Next one has only 1, nothing to give, so you knit it. And again, lift that loose strand, knit it together through your regular loop. So we are again working until the end of the row, and just like that you work the others. 3 and 4, only that you kind of mirror your 2 repeats. Okay, I'm at the end. I slip the marker and knit those 2 border stitches and turn. So remember, on row 1 on the right side, we also started with these 2 border stitches, and then we worked a regular knit stitch. So now on row 3 you just start with a knit 1 below, and then you knit 1 below, knit 1. That's it. That's the only thing that changes and then makes these V texture. And the same goes for the wrong side. Our our 4th row. We also work it like the second. wrong side, or row 3. Sorry, I'm probably making you nervous. You're just going to switch it. So we started here with a lift knit, and this time we started with a regular knit stitch, and then we lift that strand of yarn and knit it together with our regular loop. And that's it. Okay, that's all we are going to do. Those 4 rows on repeat. So if you have to frock, what will happen is that you have to get both strands on your needles everywhere you knit that lifted strand of yarn together with your regular loop. And you can see, if you ever had a look at brioche, I told you this patterns will bring you on the way to brioche. If you ever try to learn brioche, you will see that you have this kind of slip. In brioche, this is a slip stitch with a yarn over in front of it, and you're gonna have to knit those two together as if they were one. So you knit now I'm back on the wrong side, the wrong side is facing me, and I knit the regular knit stitches, but whenever I have a stitch that looks like this, I knit them directly together. And you do the same on the right side too. It will look exactly like that, and you knit together those stitches who look like this. It's kind of like a brioche stitch. How do they call them? Brackets or so? I'm not sure. So there's no lifting, or on the right side knitting below. When you frocked or ripped, you're gonna have to work one row where you're just gonna knit together those crazy looking double thingy stitches. All right, so one more thing. As you can imagine, it kind of sucks trying to repair here anything, so I recommend that you throw a lifeline. And to throw a lifeline, you do need your classic tapestry needle. This is good old floss. You can do it also with cotton yarn or so. Floss is super cheap, super thin. I found it works really well. So I know some people like to use that hole in their needles and put that floss in here. I found that it's not really working. It's getting everything tangled up. So what I recommend is that you, when you finished a row or also round, put your scrap yarn or your floss, if you want to use it, on a tapestry needle and then go through every loop. One thing that's kind of important is that you don't go through a removable or not removable marker. That would even be worse. Don't go through the marker, just go through the stitches and kind of sew it in. So if you have to frock, or actually if you have to rip, not if you have to frock, if you have to rip, you can just do it, get back to your lifeline, to a place where everything has been fine, and it will be easy to get those stitches then back on your needle. So I hope that idea came through. You're gonna leave that lifeline in here, make sure you just work, and yeah, I'm going to work some more. See each other again in a minute. So look, I knit just 4 more rows And now I will use that lifeline, so I really get all my stuff off my needles and just pull the yarn out. So here's my lifeline, and it's showing me what I have to get back on my needles. Okay, I'm at the end. I've got one more tip for you. When you have to get back stitches on your needles, it's sometimes really helpful not to work with the same size, needle size, than you worked before, but have a much smaller needle. And you could use just a whole circular needle and then work it off. Or if you have a needle set like I do, you can change one of the tips for it. Make sure you go back, okay? Change them back. So now you have your smaller needle or not, your decision, and now you're gonna have a look at where your lifeline goes through the stitches. So the first three are really easy here, just knit stitches, but then we have one that we kind of need to pull out a bit, and then it's all good and aligned again. Regular one, and again one that is kind of pulled in if you want to, and without that lifeline you would have a really hard time to understand how to get it back on your needle. You see that? Shows you right where you're gonna have to go with your needle. Okay, next one. So I got all my stitches back on the needle. Now I can pull the lifeline. It's a bit easier to knit it then. Also change my needle tip again. And now we can start working. So the difference between frogging and ribbing, I believe I said that wrong before. So the difference between knitting and frogging is that with frogging you get those brioche stitches if you want to. Just putting my markers back in place. And with ribbing, all stitches look like they used to, and you can keep just get started back again and work off them like you did before. So I'm in the middle of a right side row, and after that row we will join in the round, or let's say we will change the swatch to simulate that we work in the round. So one thing that's really helpful is to twist your border stitches. So instead of knitting them through the front loop as usual, you knit them through the back loop, and this will help you to kind of, not sure you say that they don't flare out. Now if you work in the round, you just stack on it. So we will go to the other side, and you can only do this, by the way, on circular needles because you need pointy ends on both ends. You can't work that on regular straight needles. You could also do DP ends, I guess. Okay, so now leave quite a bit of strand of yarn, and now we can work like garter in the round. So you have one knit round, let's pretend we just did that, and then you have stack on it one per round. And that's what we are going to do now. We are going to work the wrong side and purl it. So remember the wrong side, you're gonna lift strands of yarn, and there's no strand of yarn to lift on the first one. So this is the purl one. And here you have again this loose strand of yarn, and you're gonna bring your yarn forward, put that strand of yarn on your needle and purl those two together. Again, purl one and then lift one and purl it together with the regular loop. Keep going like this. And now again, pull through to get all the stitches on the other end of your circular needles. Loose strand of yarn in the back. And start again here at the beginning, knitting through the back loops the first two border stitches. And now you have again a regular knit row, kind of like a knit row, but now of course it's round. And just like before, when you have only one strand of yarn here as a purl bump, you knit one below. When you have two, you knit it. Knit one below, knit one. That's really just like you've been working it all the time. And of course now comes a purl round, and that one will be switched again, but basically I think you understand what we are doing here and how to knit the Honeycomb Brioche. Alright, now I want to show you on top of it some of the, let's say, more special increases and decreases. So the first one you gotta learn here is to make one right, and for that you lift that strand of yarn you have in between your border stitches and your first stitch and put it on your needle. And for the make one right, your loop goes from the front to the back. So you have actually a bit of a more dreadful to knit loop here at the front. This one needs to be, how do I say this? More uncomfortable to knit actually than the one here. That one's really loopy. Alright, so get into it just as if you would knit a regular loop and then knit it. Congratulations, you made a new stitch. It's called a make one right. Or the whole technique is called like this. Okay, and then you continue like you did before. This is again a knit one below. Okay, and for the make one left, you kind of do the same. So we have those two border stitches on the left, and this has been my last stitch here. Now I'm gonna grab that strand of yarn in between, and this time for the make one left, it has to go from the back to the front. So your back has this kind of smaller and very uncomfortable knit to knit loop, and when you knit in that, it's like knitting through the back loop, and that is make one left, and you have a new stitch. Now you've got a new stitch, you've got this make one right, and you can never ever use that for the regular stitch. You just have to work it as you did as you would a regular stitch, and the next round you can go below and you can lift a strand. So when you work the beanie, you will have to work decreases, obviously, for the crown shaping. And we will do one of them. I think it's pretty straightforward. You work purl 3 together, so it's a double decrease. And you just get into 3 stitches as if to purl, and then you purl them together just like it already says. And then you kind of work in pattern stitch. Keep on going just like you did before. Let's do one more. Sorry, get into those 3 stitches and pull them together. And then keep going as usual. Okay, body stitches. And on a purl round, purl into them through the back loops. Another increase you will work on the beret is a knit front back, and that one means you go into a knit stitch from the front, knit it, and then you leave that stitch on your left hand needle and knit into it again, but this time through the back loop. And you made a new stitch on top next to the other. Do it one more time. Just knit it as a regular knit stitch. Keep it on your needle. Get into that loop again through the back. Knit it again, and that's it. You made 4 stitches out of 2. Okay, so now I just work my 4 garter rows, and then we will bind off in Icelandic Bind-Off. Alright, so the last thing I want to show you is the Icelandic Bind-Off. And for the Icelandic Bind-Off, you start with knitting your first stitch, doesn't matter if it's in the round or flat. And now put it back on your left hand needle, but give it a twist. Again, get through that stitch as if to purl from the right to the left, and then knit through it the next stitch. Let both fall off, and then put the stitch from your right hand needle back on your left hand needle. Knit the next one through it and get it back on. You can make that faster. See? Try to keep it a bit loosely. This is a stretchy bind-off, but it's not super stretchy, you know? It's just, yeah, just normal stretchy. So it's good to keep it a bit loose. Okay, the last one. Woohoo! So now, of course, you cut it through, and there you have it, your Icelandic Bind-Off. Pretty, huh?